a DNA test for everybody who comes here, everybody who lives here.
Abram's descendants are the ones who have the right to have this land, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Why don't we do genetic testing on everybody in the land and find out who Abram's descendants are? It's really simple. We've cracked the human genome. We can do that. Why don't we do that? Would you be against doing that?
I have no idea what that would prove. I mean,
Really?
maybe it would be.
What do you mean? It would prove who Abram's descendants are and who has a right to live here and who doesn't, according to the theology that you yourself just explained.
So we're going to be doing my DNA test. I'm very excited.
I'm about to show you something extremely controversial. It's even illegal in the state of Israel to obtain this. And if you do obtain it, it's illegal to show it and or talk about it. Ladies and gentlemen, my DNA. Now, I bet you thought it was going to be a lot crazier than that, right? Now, you might ask yourself, why is it illegal to obtain this in the state of Israel? Because it proves through your DNA that Jews around the world have no ancestral ties to the land of Israel.
Sahar TV, and you have to take a look at this video of a Palestinian, right? A made-up Palestinian American taking a blood test, genetic testing to see where she's from, and you wouldn't believe what it says on her test.
My DNA results in a long time. So I just logged in and you're not going to believe this. Before I show you these results, I just need to share for anyone that doesn't know, I lived in England for 7 years by myself. I moved there for university. I ended up staying because I loved it. I have no family in England. I just always had this calling, like I needed to go to England. I didn't know anyone there. I ended up making the most amazing friends and people that became like family to me. But yeah, this is my updated result. Okay, so obviously we have the almost 50% Ashkenazi Jewish, but hold on, 45% English? 45% English? Also gotta love the 2% Scottish. You're telling me I lived in England for 7 years and I didn't know I was nearly half English? I was on either student visas or work visas my entire time there. I feel like there's a passport in there somewhere. I feel like I can try to finesse some, I know they're no longer part of the EU, but some sort of British blue passport.
We Jews have been in the land of Israel since the times of biblical Joshua.
Who is we? No, really, who is we? You live in Israel, so I don't expect you to be able to provide genetic or ancestral receipts for your claims about us Jews, because those kinds of receipts are illegal in Israel without a court order and other special permissions. The Jerusalem Post explains, such a thing cannot exist as kits sold directly to the public, going on to say that they have possible effects on subjects and their families. Furthermore, the national implications of these tests could hold or affect, nice grammar Jerusalem Post, could hold or affect with Israel being a government-recognized Jewish state. Don't you just love when they say the quiet parts out loud? But since they won't let you get receipts for us Jews, I brought my own. Wow. So I, an Ashkenazi, have no genetic or ancestral ties to the region of historic Palestine, and yet Israel still claims it's my homeland, which I could move to and become a citizen of under the ironically named Law of Return.
Have you heard of the Kuzalim?
Yeah, that's us. That's me, actually.
Okay, so what is your, this is a question that comes from outside of Israel. What is your opinion about the theory that Ashkenazim came from Kuzalim?
It seems relevant. It's quite obvious that white Jewish people, Ashkenazim from Europe, are not genetically, as much as I can tell, I'm not an expert, but they don't look the same like Arab Jews, people that came from Arab countries, and Ethiopians. I don't think there's a lot of, there may be some genetic relations, but there's a lot of genetic differences. And any theory that says that we're not genetically come from the same ancestors makes sense to me.
Sahar TV, and you have to take a look at this video of a Palestinian, right? A made-up Palestinian American taking a blood test, genetic testing to see where she's from, and you wouldn't believe what it says on her test. Watch.
Okay, so I just did blood work for genetic testing because I just met with my genetic counselor. I met with her 3 years ago to initially start my genetic counseling to check my genetics and all that stuff for some health stuff. This was before October 7th. It was 3 years ago. It was like in August that her and I met. Okay. And we literally, the cool thing about genetic testing is that they literally sit there and draw out your entire family tree. Now, I'm Palestinian. I'm from Gaza. All right. A lot has happened in the last 3 years. But something to note is that my parents are first cousins. Okay. My dad is one of 18 brothers and sisters from the same.
Of course, they're first cousins. And by the way, the Palestinian identity doesn't actually exist. These people looked at themselves as Bilad Hashamis or Egyptians or Ottomans that migrated during the Ottoman Empire, conquering the region. So the term Palestinian doesn't exist. They coined that term. You know, only the Jews identify themselves as Palestinian Jews before Israel was created. The local Arabs of the region looked at themselves as South Syrians or Bilad Hashamis.
Parents. And like I said, my parents are cousins. And so you can imagine this family tree, massive, huge. Also, besides it being confusing, there's a lot that I don't know. Just a lot. Most of my family does not have access to healthcare. Okay. And a lot of my family has cancer because they're in area with a lot of radiation from warfare. You get my point. So her and I revisited today, decided to do my blood work, and she shows me my family tree. She's like, just want to go through this and make sure it's right because it's kind of crazy. And then tell me why. At the very bottom of the page, it says Ashkenazi Jewish with a check mark, and it says yes. And I'm looking at it. I'm like, I don't like that.
Of course you don't like that, right? You should go back to Poland. You should go back to Poland, right? They accuse the Jews that are not from the region, even though Ashkenazi Jews are from the region. Oh no, they're not from the region. They should go back to Poland. You should go back to Poland. That's your logic, not mine. It's not our logic. Of course you wouldn't like it. Just proving to you that Jews were here before.
She's like, I know, but it's just region. And here's the thing. She didn't even have to justify it because as a genetic counselor, it does make sense, but I don't like it. Pew-wee. I do not like it. But it's just the thing that it sucks because it's like, when she showed me my family tree, I had to take about 40 people off of there. Like, they died, they were killed, they're missing. We're pretty sure they're dead. And she was just sitting there looking at me like, I'm so sorry. And I'm like, I don't know, maybe it's just like the grieving process of the last like few years. But yeah, there's probably more. But yeah, we're going to remove about 40 of these people. And then she was like, and most of them are children. I'm like, yep.
Wow.
Jews shouldn't care about DNA tests, and here's why. There are two ways to determine if someone is Jewish, whether his mother is Jewish or he converted to Judaism. If someone converted to Judaism, he essentially gets a new soul, a soul of a Jewish person. According to our tradition, all the souls of the converts were with us at Mount Sinai. So even if you converted yesterday, now you're 100% Jewish. A famous example is Ruth the Moabite, the great-grandmother of King David. In Judaism, national identity is according to the mother and tribal identity is according to the father. That's why Abraham makes sure that Isaac gets married with a Hebrew woman from Haran. That's why Jacob goes all the way to Haran to get married with Rachel and Leah. That's why Rebecca is so upset with Esau for getting married with local women. There is Deuteronomy 7, which is too long for now. Your father will determine your tribal identity, a Levi or a Judah, Ashkenazi or Sephardic.
So a lot of people have been posting their DNA tests, and it shows that a big chunk of their DNA is Ashkenazi Jewish, which is beautiful. And then I checked the comments, and it says, well. Well, what? You missed the exit to the library because you didn't read a book? Let's talk about it. So to be an Ashkenazi Jew means you're an ethnic group from the Middle East, from Judea, and you were forced into exile into places like Europe. And in Europe, it wasn't so fun for the Jews. We never lived in equality in the white European world. From the legal marginalization to the Shoah, to the Holocaust. We were never Europeans, and we were never treated as such. And this is to the extent that even centuries later, Jews were so genetically isolated that even now I can take a blood test, an Ashkenazi Jew is going to show up. Also, isn't it a bit odd that people are only denying Jews of their peoplehood after the rebirth of Israel, their homeland? Jews are finally strong and they have their homeland back. and people are desperate to find a reason to make Jews weak again.
There's a Palestinian American woman on this app who found out that she is 10% Ashkenazi Jewish. Let's see what her reaction is.
And then tell me why. At the very bottom of the page, it says Ashkenazi Jewish with a check mark, and it says yes. And I'm looking at it. I'm like, I don't like that. She's like, I know.
You don't like that? What do you mean? We're related. Muslims and Jews are related. You needed a DNA test to know that? What else?
Oh, I know, but it's just region. And here's the thing. She didn't even have to justify it, because as a genetic counselor, it does make sense, but I don't like it. Pew-wee. I do not like it.
There's a couple issues I want to address here. Number one, your family is involved in the war. You noted that. So it's understandable that you would be upset coming to find out that you're maybe related to the people that are at war with you. However, the problem with that is that your DNA came up 10% Ashkenazi Jewish. It didn't come up Israeli, if you want to make that argument that it's Israel oppressing you or the IDF. It came up 10% Ashkenazi Jewish. So what's really going on under this, and under this substantial hatred that people have for one another based on religious affiliation and political identification? Your argument and point is moot if you're going to say, well, I'm upset because I'm related to the people oppressing me. Are the Ashkenazi Jews oppressing you, or is it the IDF? Because that argument doesn't stand if you want to integrate or separate those two things. The other part that I'm going to say is that reincarnation exists and is real. And as a spiritually elevated person, obviously we don't want to see anybody die over land. We don't want to see the war going on. I don't think any normal person wants anybody to be persecuted, no matter how badly you might hate somebody. At least I don't. Reincarnation exists. God showed you a tiny thread. Hey, you're related to these people. What's going on? He's trying to break open your heart a little bit, that maybe if you do harbor some hatred towards the Jews, which I'm not saying you do or don't, but you certainly aren't happy that you share DNA with us. That's made that evident on your platform. Reincarnation exists. And when you start understanding these concepts, when you start studying them, Buddhism has a lot to say about this. The Tibetan Book of Dead, Sufism, okay? That's the Kabbalah version of Islam. Understands this. Kabbalah understands it. You realize, like, to hate somebody or to be insulted that you shared DNA with a religion or a people is a little ridiculous, because somewhere in your lineage, there were Jews that made it into your family to make you, that you should be here. And I don't know how your Jewish ancestors would feel about you being a little bit upset that you share some DNA. Food for thought.
I am 49% Jewish. I am 47% Filipino. I am 0.6% African. And I am 0.9% Central and South Asian. Shalom. Come on, chat. Bro, I actually wasn't expecting to be like that Jewish. That's crazy. Bro, I'm more Jewish than Filipino.
If we all have a little of the seed of Jacob in us, how come it's not showing up in everybody's DNA? Here's the answer. Mine shows 100% European. You'll have people that have 100% African, 100% Finnish. I've seen it. This is autosomal DNA. It only shows you where your people came from about 500 years ago and roughly about 1,000 years ago. It's saying that your DNA resembles that of people from these regions. And then you have people whose DNA shows up Mizrahi, Ashkenazi, and Sephardic. So how come that shows up, but it doesn't show up in other people? Most of us are going to be like this, primarily descending from Japheth, obviously, or Ham. And so this is where my people came from. I have one Native American ancestor on my mom's side, one on my dad's side from the 1600s. That's not going to show up in my DNA. It's diluted. It's just flooded with white people stuff, you know? Most of us have a bit of the 10 tribes in us. Less people have a bit of the southern tribe. We've got Benjamin, Levi, Judah, and who knows, maybe Simeon's mixed into them. The 10 tribes of Israel were exiled in 722 BC. So that is mysteriously diluted DNA once it spreads around and goes through this ancestor and that ancestor. So why then is it showing up Sephardic and Ashkenazi for some people as well as Mizrahi? Because they got a little bit of Benjamin, a little bit of Levi, and a little bit of Judah. So when the 10 tribes scattered, they would eventually, absorb into all of us. And then these guys were still a lot longer. So 2,000 years ago, there was still a distinction between those tribes. You understand? And then when they went to these areas, they hooked up with people of the same religion and recycled the DNA. Some, of course, dispersed and hooked up with other people and absorbed into the rest of us as well. But it's for that reason that their DNA is noticeably different. Ashkenazi, Sephardic, and Mizrahi is like native almost, right? So they have a larger amount and it shows. And remember that autosomal DNA just shows roughly where your people came from. It is not an exact science. It changes all the time. But when things are popping up Ashkenazi, you likely got it. It's coming up Sephardic. There's a reason it's coming up like that. Mizrahi, same thing, because that's where your ancestors came from 2,000 years ago. And digging deeper, you'll find out that you descend from certain tribes.
This feels like Christmas morning. I got a 23andMe ancestry and health kit. I think that I kind of want to start with the ancestry side. And it says ancestry composition. I'm 49.9% Ashkenazi Jewish. That's not a huge surprise to me at all, since my mom's side of the family is completely Jewish. My dad's side is not Jewish though. So let's go to there. Let's see what's going on. This is like, I feel really like on the spot. Okay, so I'm 100% European, which again is not a huge surprise to me, but it's just funny seeing it like that. I'm 49% Ashkenazi Jew, totally. British and Irish and German and French, a little bit Scandinavian, Northeastern European. Yeah, it's not super exciting, but I kind of know all of that information. I didn't realize how much of my family was from Germany though, so that's interesting. So let's see if I can get more information on this. It's funny, like I know where like my relatives and stuff came from, but it's kind of fun to see it broken down like this. Yeah, totally not surprising having the British and Irish be pretty strong. The German is though, so I wonder who came from Germany. I wonder if it has to do with the Ashkenazi Jewish part of my family. No really Scandinavian, no Italian. Wow, okay. It's pretty vague. It doesn't give you like, which it makes sense, but there's nothing really random in there. There's a tiny bit of East Asian and Native American, like the slightest. The first thing that they're telling me to do is do the late onset Alzheimer's disease. I do have some dementia in my family, so I wouldn't be super surprised if this was positive, but my heart's racing a little bit. I don't know. So I don't have the whatever, however you say that. So there's zero variants detected, which is, I guess, a positive thing. Cool. So Parkinson's disease. Let's open that guy up. I know that's like a very, so I have 0 variants detected. So age-related macular degeneration, a variant detected, not likely at increased risk. I'm not totally sure what that totally means, but AMD, we're familiar with that condition, but we'll see. I'll do more research on this. Have a slightly increased risk of celiac disease, which I've actually been tested by, like I've gotten blood work and stuff done for celiac disease. And I definitely gluten is harder for me to digest, but yeah, interesting.